In a vault beneath the streets of Manhattan, 497,000 gold bars sit in silence. In our last episode, paper money emerged, brilliant, dangerous, and desperately in need of an anchor. Gold was that anchor. 6,000 tons of gold, the largest concentration of monetary metal in human history. 95% of it belongs to foreign governments who trust America to keep it safe. This gold is almost never moved, almost never touched, almost never seen. Yet its mere existence, the knowledge that it is there, once anchored the entire global economy. For a century, from the 1870s to 1971, the promise that paper could be exchanged for gold kept governments honest. That promise was broken on August 15, 1971. On that evening, an American president went on television and severed the last link between money and gold. Since that evening in August 1971, every dollar, every euro, every yen has been backed by nothing but a government's word. The Architecture of Value. Episode 5. The Weight of Gold, from 1870 to the present day. The century before 1914 was the Golden Age, quite literally. The classical gold standard, established in the 1870s, was the most successful monetary system since the Roman denarius. Its rules were elegant in their simplicity. 1 British pound sterling equaled 113 grains of pure gold, fixed by law, immutable. A single American dollar equaled 23.22 grains of gold, no negotiation, no flexibility. Because both currencies were defined in gold, the exchange rate between them was automatically fixed. $4.86 per pound, year after year, decade after decade. A merchant could sign a contract today for delivery in 5 years, knowing exactly what the payment would be worth. This stability unleashed an explosion of international trade. British capital from the 1870s to 1914 built railways in Argentina, mines in South Africa, and plantations in Malaya. Money moved across borders with a freedom it would not see again for nearly a century. The system had a beautiful self-correcting mechanism. If a country imported more than it exported, gold flowed out to pay the difference. Less gold meant fewer banknotes in circulation. Fewer banknotes meant lower prices. Lower prices made the country's exports cheaper, attracting gold back again. The system balanced itself automatically like a gyroscope stabilizing a ship. No central banker needed to make decisions. Gold itself enforced discipline. Governments could not inflate their way out of trouble because citizens could always demand gold for their paper. This convertibility was the golden handcuff, a restraint that governments secretly hated, because the gold standard had a brutal dark side that its admirers preferred not to discuss. When gold flowed out and the money supply contracted, ordinary people suffered first. Wages fell, jobs vanished, farms were foreclosed, businesses failed. The gold standard demanded that populations absorb enormous pain to maintain monetary purity. In 1896, American presidential candidate William Jennings Bryan captured this rage. "You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold," he thundered. He lost. Gold won. The bankers and creditors prevailed, for now. The classical gold standard served the interests of creditors, bankers, and wealthy nations superbly. It served debtors, workers, and developing nations rather less well. Then came August 1914, and the Golden Age died in the mud of Flanders. Within days of war being declared, every major government suspended gold convertibility. The reason was simple. Wars cost money. Far more money than any government possessed in gold. The British spent £7 million per day at the peak of the fighting. The Germans spent even more, the French, the Russians, all of them printing furiously. 4 years of industrial slaughter consumed the accumulated gold reserves of centuries. When the guns finally fell silent in November 1918, the financial landscape was unrecognizable. Britain owed America $4.7 billion. France owed even more. Germany faced reparations of 33 billion gold marks, a sum designed to be unpayable. The victors wanted to return to the gold standard, to restore the golden stability of the pre-war world. But the world had changed, and gold cannot accommodate a world at war with itself. Britain returned to the gold standard in 1925 at the pre-war exchange rate, Winston Churchill's greatest mistake. This was Winston Churchill's decision as Chancellor of the Exchequer, and he later called it the greatest mistake of his life. The pre-war rate vastly overvalued the pound, making British exports ruinously expensive. British coal could not compete. British textiles languished. Unemployment soared. The general strike of 1926 was at its root a rebellion against the gold standard. But Britain's troubles were nothing compared to what happened in Germany. Germany, crushed by reparations and stripped of gold reserves, faced a monetary catastrophe unlike any before. The Weimar hyperinflation of 1923 remains the defining cautionary tale of paper money gone wrong. In January 1923, a loaf of bread cost 250 marks. By November, 200 billion marks. By November, that same loaf cost 200 billion marks. Workers were paid twice daily because prices rose between morning and afternoon. They carried their wages in wheelbarrows, literal wheelbarrows full of nearly worthless paper. Children played with stacks of banknotes. Women papered their walls with them. They burned better than coal. The lifetime savings of an entire generation evaporated in months. A professor's pension, saved over 30 years of careful living, could not buy a single newspaper. The psychological damage was even greater than the financial devastation. Germans who had trusted institutions, trusted promises, trusted paper, would never fully trust again. This trauma would echo through German monetary policy for a century. The Bundesbank's obsession with inflation, the European Central Bank's rigid mandates, all born in 1923. But the global economy's true reckoning was still ahead. October 29, 1929. Black Tuesday. The stock market crash triggered a chain reaction that would destroy the global economy for a decade. The stock market crash triggered a chain reaction that destroyed the global economy. Banks failed by the thousands. 9,000 American banks collapsed between 1930 and 1933. Depositors lost everything, not because the money didn't exist, but because everyone demanded it at once. The Great Depression proved that the gold standard, in its classical form, was dead. Gold's discipline had become gold's cruelty. Deflation was strangling economies worldwide. One by one, nations abandoned gold. Britain in 1931, America in 1933. President Roosevelt ordered Americans to turn in their gold coins and bars to the Federal Reserve. Hoarding gold became a federal crime punishable by 10 years in prison. Roosevelt revalued gold from $20.67 to $35 per ounce, overnight devaluing the dollar by 40%. With a stroke of his pen, he devalued the dollar by 40%. This was the raw power of a sovereign over money and a preview of what was to come. Then came the Second World War. and with it, a complete reshuffling of global economic power. Europe was devastated. Japan was devastated. The Soviet Union had lost 27 million people. Only one major economy emerged stronger from the war, the United States. By 1945, America held 70% of the world's monetary gold. American factories produced half the world's manufactured goods. The dollar was the only currency anyone truly trusted. In July 1944, delegates from 44 nations gathered at a grand hotel in New Hampshire to design the post-war monetary order. The Mount Washington Hotel at Bretton Woods, where the post-war monetary order would be designed. Two brilliant economists dominated the proceedings. John Maynard Keynes, representing the fading British Empire, eloquent, brilliant, and desperately ill. Harry Dexter White, representing ascendant America, blunt, determined, and holding all the cards. Keynes proposed an international currency, the Bancor, managed by a global institution. White wanted something simpler, the dollar at the center of everything. When one country holds all the gold, its representative tends to win the argument. The Bretton Woods Agreement created a new global monetary architecture. The dollar would be convertible to gold at $35 per ounce. Every other currency would be pegged to the dollar at a fixed exchange rate. The dollar became the sun around which all other currencies orbited. It was a gold standard, but with a crucial difference. Only governments could exchange dollars for gold. Ordinary citizens could not. The golden handcuff now restrained only nations, not individuals. Two new institutions would police the system: the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. For a quarter century, from 1944 to the late 1960s, the Bretton Woods system worked beautifully. Global trade expanded, economies grew, the Western world enjoyed unprecedented prosperity. The Marshall Plan rebuilt Europe using dollars backed by American gold. Germany, Japan, and Western Europe rose from ashes to become economic powerhouses. The system had one fatal flaw that would take decades to manifest. America had promised to exchange dollars for gold, but America kept printing more dollars. The Vietnam War, the Great Society programs, the space race. By the 1960s, America was printing far more dollars than it had gold to cover. By 1966, foreign governments held more dollars than America held in gold. The arithmetic was simple and devastating. America could not honor its promise to all holders simultaneously. French President Charles de Gaulle saw through the arrangement with characteristic bluntness. He called it an exorbitant privilege. America could print money while others had to earn it. De Gaulle demanded gold. In the late 1960s, France sent warships to collect bullion from the New York Federal Reserve. Other nations followed. The gold flowed out of Fort Knox like blood from a wound. Britain demanded $3 billion in gold in the summer of 1971. The Nixon administration faced a terrifying choice: honor the gold promise and watch America's reserves vanish completely, or break the promise, sever the link, set the dollar free. On Friday, August 13, 1971, Nixon summoned his top economic advisors to Camp David. Treasury Secretary John Connally, Federal Reserve Chairman Arthur Burns, Economic Advisor Paul Volcker. For 2 days they debated in total secrecy. The world had no idea what was coming. On Sunday evening, August 15th, Nixon appeared on national television. He spoke for 18 minutes. Buried in the middle of his address was a sentence that changed history. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Temporarily, that was the word he used. Temporarily. It has now been over 50 years. The temporary suspension has never been lifted. The next morning, the world woke up to a new monetary reality. For the first time since the Lydians stamped the first coin around 630 BCE, over 2,600 years of monetary history, no major currency was backed by any physical substance. Money was now pure fiat, Latin for let it be done, money by government decree alone. The dollar was worth something because the American government said so. Period. Exchange rates, fixed for a quarter century, were set free to float. The pound rose and fell with the market, the yen, the mark, the franc, all floating. Currency traders became the new alchemists, making fortunes from the constant fluctuations. Paul Volcker, who helped design the Nixon shock, later reflected on what they had done. They had launched an experiment with no precedent and no guarantee of success. An experiment that every person on Earth is still living through today. The critics predicted catastrophe. Money backed by nothing would surely collapse. Gold bugs, those who insisted gold was the only real money, warned of inevitable hyperinflation. And for a while they seemed right. The 1970s brought stagflation, simultaneous stagnation and inflation, the new fiat system's first great test. Oil prices quadrupled, inflation reached double digits, unemployment soared. The dollar lost half its purchasing power in a single decade. Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker took the most painful medicine available. He raised interest rates to 20%, deliberately creating a severe recession to kill inflation. Factories closed, farmers went bankrupt, unemployment hit 10%, but inflation broke, prices stabilized, and a remarkable era of stability began. The fiat experiment, against all predictions, began to work. Not because of gold, but because of institutions. Independent central banks, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of Japan, the Bundesbank, became the new guardians of value. Their weapon was not gold, but credibility. If people believed the central bank would keep inflation low, they acted accordingly. Expectations became self-fulfilling. Belief in stable money helped create stable money. The Great Moderation, economists called it, a quarter century of stable growth and low inflation from the mid-1980s to 2007. Central bankers were hailed as maestros, masters of the economic universe. Alan Greenspan, the wizard of the Fed, markets hung on his every cryptic word. For a brief moment, it seemed humanity had solved the eternal problem of money. Stable fiat money, independent central banks, floating exchange rates, a perfect system. Then came 2008, and the illusion of mastery shattered. The global financial crisis proved that the fiat system had its own version of the gold standard's fatal flaw. Instead of too little money causing deflation, too much credit caused asset bubbles. Housing prices in America doubled in 5 years, fueled by reckless lending and financial engineering. When the bubble burst, the entire global financial system nearly collapsed. Governments and central banks responded with something unprecedented, creating trillions of dollars from thin air. Quantitative easing, the polite term for printing money electronically. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet grew from $900 billion to $4.5 trillion. The gold bugs screamed that hyperinflation was inevitable. It didn't happen. Prices remained remarkably stable. The relationship between money supply and inflation, once considered ironclad, had somehow broken. Or perhaps it had simply evolved into something we don't yet fully understand. Stand back and consider the journey we have traveled across 5 episodes, from 8000 BCE to the 21st century. From cowrie shells on a Neolithic beach to digital numbers on a Federal Reserve screen. From metal you could bite to promises you can only believe. At every stage, the same pattern repeats. Humans invent a new form of money to solve a real problem. The innovation works, trust builds, commerce flourishes. Then the guardians of the new money discover they can create more of it. A little at first, then more, then much, much more. Trust erodes, prices rise, the system strains under the weight of broken promises. Crisis forces innovation, and the cycle begins again with a new form of money. Cowrie shells gave way to Lydian coins around 6030 BCE. Coins gave way to Chinese paper around 1000 CE. Paper needed gold as its anchor from the 1870s. Gold gave way to pure faith in 1971. Faith gave way to electronic digits. Each form was more abstract than the last. Each required more trust. Each was more powerful. And each was more dangerous when that trust was betrayed. The Lydians debased electrum in the 6th century BCE. The Romans diluted silver in the 3rd century CE. The Chinese overprinted paper in the 13th century. The Spanish flooded the world with silver in the 16th century. Governments abandoned gold in the 20th century. And today, central banks create trillions of dollars, euros, and yen with keystrokes. The architecture of value has grown taller and more magnificent with each generation. But the foundation remains the same fragile substance it has always been. Trust. Trust between strangers, trust in institutions, trust in promises. Break that trust, and the most sophisticated financial system collapses as surely as a debased Roman coin. Maintain it, and slips of paper or digits on a screen can build civilizations. This is the architecture of value, beautiful, powerful, eternally fragile. Built not from gold or silver or paper, but from the most precious and most perishable substance of all. Human belief. The architecture of value. 5 episodes complete, from 10,000 BCE to 2008, the full arc of physical money. But the story is far from over. We have traced the architecture of value from shells to fiat, from Neolithic villages to the Federal Reserve, 5 episodes tracing 10,000 years of humanity's most important invention. Money is not wealth. Money is the technology that allows wealth to flow between strangers. It is the most powerful tool of human cooperation ever devised, and the most dangerous when that cooperation breaks down. From the first cowrie shell to the last central bank keystroke, the question remains the same. How do you trust a stranger? Thank you for joining this journey through the architecture of value. Written and produced with extensive historical research and scholarly consultation. All visualizations are AI-generated historical reconstructions for educational purposes. Sources include works by Barry Eichengreen, Ben Stile, Liaquat Ahmed, and Jeffrey Sachs. Next, Episode 6, The Digital Revolution. From the first credit card in 1950 to cryptocurrency, central bank digital currencies, and the future of money. The architecture of value will return. How money shaped our world, how it continues to shape our future. The architecture endures, the value evolves, the story continues.